Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.
Two things can happen in a company that's going down. Either people can be super demoralized, and the company is bound to then go down.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Conversations in Quarantine. Today we've got someone very interesting with us. He's worked with some of the best companies, tech companies, non-tech companies in India. His CV is what you call a gold CV because the kind of company he's worked for and the kind of work he's done, it's absolutely the best in the business. Abhishek, thanks a lot for doing this with us.
Thank you, Kunj. Thank you for having me.
Abhishek, just to begin with, your 2 years at TIS, what were they like? What were some of the skills and attitudes that you picked up while you were at TIS?
From a skill set perspective, obviously the obvious one is the HR theoretical knowledge that is grounded me in. Apart from that,
Right.
also the appreciation of maybe contextualizing HR to different industries through our fieldwork
Right.
immersions during summer internship. I think that was very, very interesting, a sort of lineup of companies, etc. And being able to bag Microsoft right up front, that was a wow moment. And then consequently, the pre-placement interview and the offer. I think that was really, really good. Actually, I learned more about B schools from the competitions that we used to attend in other B schools than at TIS. TIS was more like a university than a B school. I think B school is not just about getting those grades and the GPA in, right? It is also about the peer learning and the experience that you get, and the experience that you curate for yourself.
Abhishek, let's get into your first job. What was that like out of TIS when you got into Microsoft?
First 6 months, I got to appreciate talent acquisition a little better. Then I was able to make sense of why this really happened, while it was not really explicitly spelled out for us. There was so much to learn. I did not realize the talent acquisition space could actually be strategic. I thought it's just about, Boolean strings that you just string together and just present candidates, they get hired, you have nothing else to do. Yeah, there wasn't a moment's respite in terms of really hiring and getting those numbers in. Got really immersed in business, got to understand the business really well, and did fairly well, I think, in the 6 months. So I think my takeaway is this, right? I mean, again, a role is what you make it out to be.
Hmm.
As good or bad as you can make it out to be by what you do.
Take us through your favorite project in your time at Microsoft.
I think what was really, really exciting for me was the direct sourcing work that I did at Microsoft. Agencies were like, okay, we would rather work with the Office division or Windows division where we'll get hires quickly, obviously, rather than with Bing where the effort's going to be high and the results are going to be less. That's where I started experimenting a lot with LinkedIn. I actually requested my business to get me a LinkedIn recruiter account, and that's where things really, really started going up from. We were able to get a lot of senior hires in, and that mapping work really in terms of mapping out top companies, speaking with candidates irrespective of a role being available or not. I think that was interesting. Also, the fact that I got to work on a returnship project at Microsoft. So that was called Springboard. It was for women who were on a career break, and Microsoft wanted to bring them back, reskill them, and deploy them back to the workforce, essentially for solving for the diversity issue. So that was running for the MSIT division, which is the internal IT division. We had never done it for India Dev Center. First iteration, we got about 6 project interns in for the Springboard program.
Abhishek, from hiring engineers and product managers at Microsoft to transition to hiring salespersons at LinkedIn, how different was LinkedIn as an organization compared to Microsoft?
When
Like,
my would-be manager at LinkedIn reached out to me and said that, hey, non-tech recruiting, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you know that I do tech recruiting. Why would I ever want to do non-tech? So that's how the conversation really started. So it did not start off too well. When I progressed through the conversations and I spoke with some of these people, I obviously loved LinkedIn as a product, right? Because I was getting a lot of success using LinkedIn. So being in a company whose product I believe in and a platform that I've been using for so many years, obviously was very exciting. I wasn't very sure about the non-tech side of things, but once I spoke with a couple of business leaders, looked through their profiles, etc. Also, I was told that, hey, this directly impacts the revenue of the company, hiring salespeople. And that got me excited. I said, okay, I'll probably do this again, like maybe for a year, then transition into tech recruiting at LinkedIn. And LinkedIn as an organization was very different from Microsoft.
Hmm.
Like it was shock and cheese. When I joined LinkedIn, there weren't too many processes in place, which I loved. There weren't too many guidelines. You could just draw your own picture. You were given a large canvas to just paint in that sense. The culture at LinkedIn was very, very strong. Everyone had a very strong sense of belonging to the company that I had not experienced at Microsoft. Microsoft was great as a company. You had a lot of pride working with the company, but then you did not necessarily connect the way you'd connect with LinkedIn. So I think that was a big difference.
You mentioned how hiring salesperson is required you to do a lot more heavy lifting compared to hiring engineers. I want to go a little deeper into that.
Mhm.
What is it that you look for in an ideal tech salesperson?
Again, different companies will have their different flavors. Ideally, you look at someone who's result oriented, who understands solution selling and not just doing like box sales. Someone who knows consultative selling is able to do that discovery along with pitching rather than just hard selling in that sense. Who comes across as someone who's trying to help the client achieve a common goal rather than just to push his own agenda. I think those were the underlying
Right.
pillars of sales recruiting that I've used everywhere.
How do you go about building a unique employer brand?
I think what really changed it for me was my stint at Alcon, which was a med device company, right? You would not do a lot of sexy branding, if you will, in that space. I think that's where a lot of difference came in, where it was more around figuring out what the value prop is for the internal employees as well, building out a very strong EVP. So back at Microsoft or at LinkedIn, there was a global EVP in place. Alcon was in a very unique situation. It was an independent company, which was acquired by Novartis, spun off from Novartis and forming its own identity. So the identity itself was in a little bit of a flux. Alcon was an experiment. It started off as an experiment. I wanted to get back to doing HR business partnering work, having done recruiting at Microsoft and and at LinkedIn,
Right.
want to get into an HR business partnering role. So Alcon gave me a unique sort of a role where I could double hat between talent acquisition and business partnering, and that I think was perfect for me because when I started off, I obviously pivoted more towards the talent acquisition side of things at Alcon. That's how I built my credibility, and then tried to leverage that
Right.
for my HR business partnering work. It was an interesting phase because the company was trying to undergo transformation. It was a it was a loss-making company on a downward spiral, very different to say a Microsoft, which was in a stable state back then, LinkedIn, which was on hyper growth sort of phase, and Alcon was going down, and yet we were looking to hire very strategic hires to ensure that the
Right.
some of the functions are bolstered. So that was a very different space, and HR had a lot to do in terms of looking at capability, looking at org structures, looking at efficiencies, and seeing how we could get more done with less. And from an organization standpoint, they also took the leap of faith and gave me APAC as a region to manage from a talent acquisition standpoint, and that was also
Right.
my first sort of outside India sort of an experience. And not
Right.
just talent acquisition, I got to do some of these OD workshops called high performing team workshops with leadership teams across APAC, across functional areas, just to bring in alignment, just to ensure that everyone's goals are aligned to the larger vision of the company. And that was really eye opening, right? How across the organization, there's this immense sense of pride about what Alcon was and what it potentially can be. Everyone had ideas, right? And it was great to hear all of that
Right.
and get energized, right? Because I mean, two things can happen in a company that's going down. Either people can be super demoralized, and the company is bound to then go down. You have a great product, you have great people, but the market dynamics then don't allow you to operate at the optimum level. So that's one way where the company can really turn around, and that's what happened with Alcon.
Abhishek, after journeying through Microsoft, LinkedIn, Alcon, you entered Uber, which is a very different company whose genesis is very different. Uh, take us through some of your most challenging projects.
Especially when I joined back then, there was a lot of negative press about Uber.
Right.
Again, internally, I did not experience any of that when I joined, which was a big plus. So I was recruited to head up tech recruiting for the Hyderabad Dev Center, which was the largest dev center, and it was mad in terms of the pace of growth that we were looking at in the tech space. So that was really interesting. So we grew from about 60 engineers to 400 engineers, and it seems like a blink of an eye. Also, it was interesting because our non-tech recruiting leader quit. She was based out of Delhi, and most of her non-tech, leadership team sits out of Delhi. So I got an opportunity to double hat for the tech recruiting and the non-tech recruiting. So I was in Delhi on secondment for about 6 months till we found someone.
Right.
And that was really interesting because then I had the best of both the worlds, right?
Now let's get into Browser Stack, which is the company that you work for right now. What's it like handling HR responsibilities in a startup for 3 different offices in 3 different continents, from Dublin and San Francisco and Bombay?
Again, I don't handle all of HR. What I handle is talent acquisition, and I do some projects on the side which span across talent acquisition and HR. It is complicated. I have never handled Europe as a region, and there are a lot of compliances and laws that need to be adhered to. And this is the first time I really started implementing something called GDPR in terms of privacy laws. So I think that was interesting. Also, because I do not have like feet on street in terms of recruiters in Dublin, it becomes a little difficult to understand what the candidate experience is like when people come in. But luckily now we have someone who's going to manage the coordination there, so I'll have a little more sense. But yeah, so in a global role, I think there are 2 things that go for a toss. One, your work-life balance, because you're managing across 3 time zones, and 2, I think I was at a phase where I thought I knew non-tech recruiting, I knew tech recruiting. So this threw a very different curveball at me in terms of the geographical complexity, and hence the complexities which arise in terms of compensation, in terms of expectations of talent, also in terms of the fact that, like, while BrowserStack may be really big globally in the developer community, talent may not be quite aware of us, and hence
Right.
while we get a lot of people to join us in India fairly easily. In India, campus talent is really glorified, right? I mean, the entire day 0, day 1 funda is absent in countries outside, and
Right.
it's much easier to get access to campus talent.